We hear about DevOps and going faster and more incrementally in software development. That's part of software-defined warfare. We talk about model-based software. That's part of it. Digital transformation is part of it. Worrying about data and controlling data and curating data, that's part of it too. Having good repositories of data is a really important thing too. And then actually having trained people and making sure you cherish those people. So a lot of the things that at times look like they're a little disparate really come together under the overall goal of software-defined warfare.
Earlier this year, the Pentagon's top cyber policy official said that integrating cyber effects into broader military operations represents the future of cyber warfare. The official noted that the goal is to enable more precise strikes, degrade an adversary's ability to command its forces, and support the U.S. military as it maneuvers on the battlefield. Welcome to the SEI Podcast Series. My name is Matthew Butkovic. I'm the Technical Director of Cyber Risk and Resilience here in the CERT Division of the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm joined today by Dr. Paul Nielsen to discuss the evolution of software-defined warfare. But first, please let me give some background on our esteemed guest. During Dr. Nielsen's nearly 22-year tenure as the Director and Chief Executive Officer of the SEI, he helped bring modern software practices to the DoW while enabling mission-critical cyber research to bolster national security. He also extended the SEI's impact and scope globally and recently saw the establishment of our Artificial Intelligence Division in 2021. Prior to joining CMU, Dr. Nielsen served 32 years in the U.S. Air Force, rising to the rank of Major General and Commander of the Air Force Research Lab. During his time at AFRL, he managed a 10,000-strong military and civilian team with an annual budget of approximately $3.5 billion. His career in research and development also included positions at various federal research organizations such as the National Security Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. It's my great honor to sit down with you today, Paul, and talk about the evolution of software-defined warfare.
Sure, nice to be here with you, Matt.
So I think we should start with some definitions. The topic is software-defined warfare. I think we generally know what warfare is. We know what software is.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the join between software and warfare.
Yeah, I think that's it's an interesting point because it's a term that's being bandied around quite a bit. It means different things to different people. For some people, it's a very narrow definition, such as software-defined radio, which was something about 35 years ago, and maybe another device like that. For others, it says it's really about the whole method, the whole strategy by which we wage war or prevent war. And I think the larger definition is the better one to think of. Recently, we'll probably talk about this some later, the Atlantic Council did a study about a year ago, and they kind of took the expansive definition of software-defined warfare to say it's not only about the devices, it's about the whole attitude and the fact that software is in the middle of almost everything now. So you have to think of it that way.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to look at it, which is software is both adding great advantage, but it's also a through line through all of these things. It's a potential source of risk.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's an evolution of thinking that's influencing both the way that we build and field systems, but also doctrine and the way that the U.S. military goes to war.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I think back to my early days in the Air Force when I was working on some spacecraft. And, once you launch a spacecraft, especially in those days, you don't go up and fix it. Right. But you could fix the software. And so at some point we learned that having some software on the satellite allowed us to evolve capabilities on the spacecraft that we might not have been able to do otherwise. And that was a real good thing.
Yeah, so giving you a sort of a newfound agility or flexibility with those systems. So when I think about some of the most pressing issues in cyber and in defense, artificial intelligence sort of rises to the surface. So, Paul, what are your thoughts about using AI to speed analysis for things like targeting?
Oh gosh!
And also, where does that fit in our description of software-defined warfare?
Okay, that's a good point too. And of course, first of all, you have to remember that while artificial intelligence techniques are a little bit more specific, basically they end up being software, end up being data-driven, data-trained, data-controlled, and they sit inside systems that are largely software systems. There may be a physical component of it too, because we have a lot of cyber-physical systems, like they start talking about self-driving cars, right? But ultimately, it's software that's involved in this. So we at SEI always talk about the interplay between software AI, and cyber. They each can help each other. They each open up new vulnerabilities that people have to consider as well. But you really have to think of them as a whole. You have to look at them in all those respects. You don't want an AI system that's cyber vulnerable. You don't want a AI system that doesn't written with good software, vice versa. So you want to be real careful about that.
It seems to me it's all about trustworthiness and sort of demonstrable reliability in some ways.
Yeah, that's true. And I like to think that that's no different than how we think about people.
Absolutely.
We do want trustworthy people,
Yeah.
and the military and governments and companies all over go to a large extent to try to make sure they have trustworthy people. So in some ways, worrying about the trustworthiness of your software, your AI systems, isn't that strange, and we shouldn't think of it as something new we have to worry about.
I think that's something really encouraging to tell the audience, which is this evolution may seem really daunting, but if we draw on this catalog of things we know help, and under your leadership, the SEI was on the forefront of so many of these, right?
Yeah.
These are not intractable problems. They're variations of the theme in my mind.
That's right. That's right. I think about in the military how when we take a new recruit in, you sort of bring them down to a common standard and then start to build them all up. And you really work hard to make sure they're trustworthy and that they learned how to trust their teams and work together as teams. I think as we bring AI in, remember a lot of times AI is going to be separate, but most of the time it's going to be working with human partners. And so they both have to learn the limitations of each and the ways to trust each other.
So really that human-machine teaming.
Yeah.
You mentioned, Paul, the Atlantic Council's their work, Commission on Software-Defined Warfare, and it describes optimizing software-defined warfare. And I think about the state between optimized and where we might be now.
Yeah.
Any suggestions as to tools or techniques that organizations should consider when recrafting to be software-centric in their approach to warfare?
Wow, there's a lot of things
there.
that
was a lot to unpack, right?
That's a lot of things there.
Sorry, yes.
But the point is that a lot of the words we're hearing now, although they might sound like they're different approaches, really come down to trying to take advantage of software. So we hear about DevOps and going faster and more incrementally in software development. That's part of software-defined warfare. We talk about model-based software. That's part of it. Digital transformation is part of it. Worrying about data and controlling data and curating data, that's part of it too. Having good repositories of data is a really important thing too. And then actually having trained people and making sure you cherish those people. So a lot of the things that at times look like they're a little disparate really come together under the overall goal of software-defined warfare.
So that convergence and the convergence in our work, right? I think about that Venn diagram you described.
Yes.
And under your leadership, you shepherded the SEI into the forefront of AI research.
Yes.
And researching also development of practices, including last month, the release of an AI maturity model. I also want to talk about the AI security incident response team and the emergence of the AI division. It seems to me these things are working in conjunction, working on architecture, governance, the underpinnings of AI,
right?
AI engineering for fielded systems, and then having a capability to respond when something goes awry or you've experienced exploitation. Yeah,
and we sort of pioneered that work in the cybersecurity area for a long time. It's a little bit different with AI, but not so different as that we can't learn from what we did in cyber, and so we are. And what we're seeing is that the new systems of AI have lots of vulnerabilities in them. As we push the frontiers, it's great, but we're not always worried about the vulnerabilities that are left behind as we push the frontiers. And to use this in real systems that can affect human life, whether it's a self-driving car or in warfare, we want to make sure we clean up those vulnerabilities that are kind of forgotten about as we push the frontiers. Yeah, I think about the recent developments with Anthropic and Mythos, where it's really good at enumerating vulnerabilities. Yes. It's not as good about fixing those vulnerabilities. So I think there's this asymmetry for a while we figure it out. But I have no doubt that the SEI will stay on the forefront of solving these problems for the country. A question then, Paul, about our relationship to the Pentagon, right? Thinking about the things that our sponsors want most. Can you point to a few things you think will be front of mind for the Department of War? Well, the Department of War really has a few themes that are right on right now. One of them is to spin in some of the great innovations from the commercial world. We really need to do that. We know that some of our peer competitors are not held back by some of our own bureaucracy.
Right.
And we need to clean that up. We need to take away the inhibitions that keep us from going faster. They're very much impressed with trying to go faster and to do things at scale, both of which we're seeing are more important than ever as we see some of the conflicts going on around the world, like Ukraine, Russia, like Iran, U.S. That quick innovation and innovation at scale makes a big difference. And that's not something we completely emphasize for much of the Cold War period, where we really were looking at more exquisite weapons that had really special capabilities and looked at having a technological edge and forgot about the quantitative edge that might be important as well.
Yeah, I think about the concept of the third offset and the idea that this technological advantage. I think about the conflict in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I think that folks have maybe the wrong takeaway. They look at it, it looks like the Psalm in 1917. But that's not because the technology isn't maturing, it's because of the way it's being employed in my estimation. So I'd like your thoughts on is that a software-centric conflict? Mm-hmm. And if so, what are the lessons we can take away from it?
Well, I think it is. It's not the same one we might do if we were with a peer competitor, but it is. And we're seeing that innovation cycle on both sides going pretty fast. And it also is one that's, learned that the major weapons of the past don't always make it in this new world. So the tank warfare that we thought might be decisive there, because the Russians had an overwhelming number of tanks, hasn't made so much a difference. The employment of drones, often cheap drones on both sides, has made a difference and caused lots of problems for both sides. I think that's something we have to really worry about as we go into the future. How would we defend against a massive onslaught of very cheap drones? How would we employ some cheap drones if we needed to in a combat situation as well?
And those are topics that we're working on actively with the SEI, so it's great to hear that we're plugged into that. Well, Paul, sincerely, it's been a pleasure today talking about the subject. For the audience, we will include links in the transcript to the resources mentioned during this podcast, including a blog post on the topic. Finally, a reminder to the audience that our podcasts are available pretty much anywhere you can access a podcast, including SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcast, as well as the SEI's own YouTube channel. If you like what you see and like what you heard today, please give us a thumbs up. Thanks again for joining us.